These guys don't care child, woman, baby, male, they don't care who. These guys don't have no remorse and no respect for nobody. They just shoot. Yeah. Yes, it's pretty hectic in this area.
These kids don't got no structure. They don't got no remorse for nothing they do.
Hey, now look, E, public announcement. You better move off the 4th floor. Cause I'll be there every day. Every day. Better go to your mama house. Y'all backdoor the wrong.
Welcome back to another episode of Swamp Stories. For this one, well, we cover a topic that you're probably tired of hearing about. Like, damn, Oblock again? But I promise you, this video will introduce you to a new generation that you've never heard of before. However, in order for it all to make sense, we must cover a whole lot of background information. So in this video, you'll learn the history of Oblock, why they're so loyal to each other, and how the new generation has completely messed it up. With that being said, welcome to the new generation of Oblock. But before we get into it, let me run the intro. Chicago has always been a wicked and dangerous city, and most importantly with a huge underworld. Whether it was the Mafia, the Greaser Gangs, the Latin Kings, or today's GDs and BDs. Through all of these eras, there's always been one constant: the violence has never stopped. And because of this, hardworking families have been scrambling for decades to try to find a good neighborhood to live. So the families with good money either moved to the north side or to one of the various suburbs to get away. And that left many low-income families in truly dangerous and despair areas. Specifically, the south and west sides have become the worst parts of the city, averaging 2 to 3 homicides a day over the last 50 years. As a result, many of these families felt trapped in this environment and were looking for an affordable way out. So what was the solution to this problem? A wonderful new phenomenon called co-op housing.
The co-op has opened its doors to everyone.
Canada's first co-op apartment building.
Because managing a co-op means new responsibilities.
Here, instead of buying an apartment, you purchase the right to live in it by investing in the corporation. It's cheaper than buying a home, and it's a great way to find an upstanding community. Because there's a barrier to entry, it pretty much weeds out all of the gang members and unemployed individuals, and it creates a safe enclave in the middle of the hood. Well, one of these complexes was built on King Drive between 63rd and 66th, easily one of Southside Chicago's worst areas. The co-op was named the Parkway Gardens, and at the time it was state-of-the-art for middle-class families.
With 35 buildings and nearly 700 units, it quickly became a premier housing choice for African-American families.
When I was growing up, this was considered the elite property for doctors, lawyers, nurses, professional people that lived over here. This was the cornerstone of our community.
It's protected by train yards on the south and west sides, an elementary school to the north, and a major fence going down King Drive. So although it was in the hood, it was sheltered from the bad elements and the residents could live a peaceful life. This included the family of former First Lady Michelle Obama, for those who didn't know. Well, the glory days of Parkway Gardens lasted for a couple of decades with a strong middle-class community. But then, sadly, the complex would start its gradual decline. In the mid-1980s, the owners of Parkway sold the complex to a new investor who decided to get rid of the co-op status. They replaced it with Section 8 renting, and here's where the problems began. Throughout the 80s and 90s, the new owners neglected the property and started accepting new residents without background checks. And because of this, Chicago kingpins began moving into the complex to operate their business. Specifically, a BD kingpin named Tokyo G opened up in the complex and built a major operation. So major traffic was coming in and out of the Parkway Gardens on a daily basis, which caused other hoods to become jealous. Specifically, a territory across King Drive thought that he was taking up their business, and they plotted on his head. This would be a reputed GD set called STL, long known for putting in work. Well, in September of 1998, Tokyo was tragically killed while rolling through their neighborhood. This is known to be the first official loss of Parkway as a collective, and from what we know, STL were the big bullies in the neighborhood and they simply eliminated Tokyo because he was taking their customers. In most of Chicago, this would start a major beef, but Parkway just really wasn't like that yet. These other hoods had major gangs that had been rocking together for decades, and Parkway really had nothing. They didn't have structure and there was no unity in order for them to fight off these other hoods. And as a result of all this, no one respected them in the streets, which will actually be important. Well, because of this lack of respect, many of the Parkway youth were tested and disrespected at school. This made it very important for them to stick together and to always have each other's backs against all odds. Since the very start, it was loyalty and brotherhood over everything, as it was the only way they could survive. Then, out of nowhere, their challenges would become even more complicated. In 1998, Chicago began tearing down the majority of their public housing, and instead of rebuilding the projects, they decided to give all of the residents Section 8 vouchers where they could move into complexes like Parkway Gardens. And just like that, the Parkway Gardens filled up with project residents from all over the city. Obviously, with all the gang beef in Chicago, this made for a potentially dangerous situation. Rival gang members could now be neighbors, and not to mention that the original Parkway residents were entering the streets as well. The Parkway teenagers could potentially not like these other hoods moving into theirs, and maybe they'll want to send a message. Things could potentially get ugly, and there was only one way to keep the peace. The Parkway Gardens residents need to agree to unify as one and to leave alone their past affiliations. So here's how it plays out. One particular Parkway native would step up to